Hello, hello. Welcome to another Spill the Tea episode. Today I have Brittany Frost with us. I'm so excited. Hello, Brittany.
Hey, hey.
I just want to introduce you really quick. So, Brittany started off she's now a coach and a community builder, very much into self care, which I love, which we'll share more about soon. But she actually started off as a teacher, went into the fitness industry, and now is really created a sisterhood to build more community for women to expand and love and empower themselves more. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. It's kind of just been like a natural progression, from the classroom to fitness and now into looking at just like the totality of our wellness. Yeah.
I love it so much. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're here
Thanks.
today. Thank you
Thanks.
for sharing a Spill the Tea episode.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, of course. So just so you guys know, I met Brittany. Gosh, I mean, I accidentally met you in person for a second at Keisha Fitzgerald. Well, Keisha Get Married at
Yeah.
her event last year.
Yes.
And then our paths just kind of kept crossing on social media and all of the things. And Brittany was shifting and doing some cool stuff. And I joined her sisterhood and asked her to be a part of Spill the Tea. So here we are.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love how events bring people together in the craziest, most wildest ways. I mean, just life in general, I guess, does that. But I mean, even your fitness industry, like I used to do the same thing. So it was
Yeah.
like things just end up overlapping and being in the same ecosystem at the same time, not knowing someone, and then finding out later that you were still part of something
hmm
that was similar is so cool.
Yeah. And I think getting to events, getting surrounded by a community, it's actually something that I was super anti for so long. I was one of those women, one of those girls that was like, I'll do it all on my own. I called myself independent, right? And then I started to get into adulthood and I realized that like, how do you make friends as an adult? Or how do you get surrounded by people who are on a similar path as you and get surrounded by incredible women and men and just people, incredible humans that can propel you into like the next level of you. And events do that for me big time. But yeah, I community, whether it's a in-person community or an online community, I think as an adult is actually like so powerful now because how do you make like I don't know how you make
It is.
friends or like meet people as an adult,
It
right?
totally shifts, right? Because it's like when you're in school, you have your friends, the people that you're around every single day. And then you graduate and like maybe you go to college, maybe you
Mhm.
don't, but it's like you're out on your own. And it's like, unless you're in the same community or the same place that you've been your whole life, you move, things change,
Yeah,
you shift.
yeah,
One person's going this direction, you're going this direction, and you don't have the same things in common. I totally relate to making friends as an adult is different.
mhm. Yeah,
So
it is. It is, and, I was never the person that stayed in one place, and I'm sure we'll talk about that today, but I was never the person that really stayed in one place for very long, and so I've constantly been in scenarios where I've had to put myself out there and figure out how I can meet people, and, um, this year especially, I told myself, like, "I have to get surrounded by women who are going to help me propel to that next level," and getting to empower her was a big catalyst that actually started all of that. Like that was an event that truly was the like breaking point for me to like move on and do a couple other things in my life. And like you never know if you don't get to those spaces. So every time I get to another event or I join a new community, I get excited about like who are the people that I get to bless with my presence, but also get to bless me back with their knowledge, their skill sets, just their perspective of how they do things, right?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think just getting in a room with other like-minded people is so key, as you mentioned, because you never know until you're there. Like you never
Yeah.
know what someone can even like the stories, the inspiration, what you need to hear in that exact moment. I'll never forget at that specific event, Trent Shelton spoke and he said,
Yes.
he like took us through this moment of time of like, okay, like in the next 2 years, like in the next 6 months, in the next 2 years. And then he got to 5 years, and all of a sudden, I just got this pit in my stomach like, oh my gosh, I might not even make it to 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, not saying, like, I mean, tomorrow's not promised, but it was just like this gut punch of like, what the heck are you doing with your life? And how are you
Mm.
staying small and not showing up in the ways that you know that you're meant to show up? And it was like,
Yeah.
that was just a moment in that event that was like, oh, I've got some work to do. I've got
Yeah.
some real work to do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And there's like, you don't like, that's not something you can forecast or how it's even going to hit
Mm-mm.
or land with you. You don't know that that conversation is coming. And somebody, like,
No.
even in conversations in between, when we're standing in line getting ready to go into the venue, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's when I actually got to speak words to you.
Yeah, that's when our paths crossed and we got to, like, connect real fast on Instagram, like, "Wait, let me get your handle so that, like, because this moment's gonna fly by."
And it literally
Yeah,
was just like that. And then here we are, and connected in such a different way too, you know? And like, just your sisterhood and how you've chosen to show up online was so appealing and inspiring to me. And so that's like, I'm like, oh, I love her content. I love what she's saying. I love what she's doing. I love that she's made this brave pivot in her life.
yeah.
And it's like life is all about these pivots. So let's get into that. Let's talk about
Oh,
that.
yes.
I mean, honestly, it's funny because I'm married to a military man, and so we're moving all the time. So, and I
Okay.
noticed, or I've seen you move from Texas to Florida just recently.
Mhm.
And even prior to that, you were in California to Texas, right?
Yep, yep, yep.
I love it because I went from Arizona to Kentucky, Kentucky to California, now California to Colorado.
Oh
And
my gosh.
we're getting
Yeah.
ready to experience the move too. So let's get in. I want to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. So, I'm like, "Where do I take you back?" Okay, I'll take you back about a year ago, last May, okay? And I was journaling, and I'm Christian, but I don't have like, I don't have these audible voices from God that are telling me how to move my life. And oftentimes, like, God can seem to me like an imaginary friend that I'm like, hey, are you there? Or is it just my own voice? Like, which voice is in my head today? Right. But I had a very audible moment that, and when I hear God, like when someone's like, oh, I heard God, the way I hear it, it's me in my own head. Right. But me in my own head that day was a very loud, audible message for me to lay down the business that I had built for 10 years. Now, coming out of the classroom, I guess I can take some of your people back who are tuning into this, but coming out of the classroom, I got my degree in elementary education and I did the path that I was supposed to do. My parents are both educators and I'm the youngest, went to college, did all the things that were like you were supposed to do in my family. And I got out, I got to elementary school teaching and I taught for 10 years and I loved my students. I love teaching. I have a gift for teaching. However, the public school system and like the four walls of a classroom they just were not for me. And at that point, so I'm taking you even further back, but at
Yeah.
that point in my life, I realized like it just felt like I was looking down like a toilet that was just like spiraling down. Like, this is it. I guess this is just like, I looked around my classroom at the end of the day and I'm like, is this it? Like, is this what life is now? And so I took a leap at that point to start a online health and wellness business,
Yeah.
and that turned into a full-time lucrative business, and it was phenomenal, loved it, until I heard that voice, and that voice was nudging me to lay it down, and it was so confusing because it just got louder and louder, but I was like, "I'm successful, I know what I'm doing, like, I'm good at this job, like, I can do
Yeah.
it, I can wake up and do it." Um, I felt like I was making an impact, right? And so that voice, and I felt, I guess, truly deep down, I felt like there were a lot of people on the other end of my choice that I would disappoint or let down if
Mm.
I laid down the thing that I had built for 10 years. And I still, a year later, I finally got to the point where I was able to, like, quote unquote, lay it down. Um, and that wasn't an easy arrival point to get to. It actually took me from that May of like first hearing that, of like just wrestling with this idea. It took me basically until just prior to the new year. And I realized that part of the reason I couldn't lay it down and felt like I was always disappointing people was I would get to events, not like events like what you and I met at, but like company events,
Yeah.
right? And I'd get to these. Oh, am I here?
Yeah.
I feel like, oh, my little screen is like buffering. Okay, there
Okay.
I am. So I would go to these events and then I'd tell myself, okay, let me just get to the next event. If I can just get to the next, like, and I'm sure we all tell ourselves something to that place, like if I can just get through this month, if I can just get through this season at work, or if I can just, and we make up reasons for staying in something that's no longer, that we've outgrown, right? That's
Right.
no longer serving us, but we just make extensions on it, to play small. And that's what I was doing. And so I realized that events were the catalyst for me to stay stuck, and I was getting myself to the next event so that I wouldn't disappoint anybody, and I'd get my team and my people to that space. But then I would get to that event and I'd leave exhausted, but I would also feel like there was a new wave of energy, of new goals for people, and new, just new visions. And I felt like as the leader, I was the one who was supposed to carry my team and carry my people and carry my clients to fulfill those visions. And
Mm.
so I'd get to the end of the event, and I would think that I had to carry them to the next event. I had to, like, let me be the one to just like rally us to that. And so it was this constant struggle. So right before the new year, I was like, okay, you know what? This is about events, because the events are what are keeping me stuck. And so I went online. I canceled every hotel room for 2023 that had anything to do with a business event. I canceled every event that I was booked for. I was supposed to go to Mexico. I was supposed to go to San Antonio. There were just a bunch of, I was going to go to Vegas. Like, there were a bunch of events, canceled all of them, canceled all my hotel rooms, and then started to really leverage a like 2 month like fade out plan with my team and my clients, um with no plan. I'm telling you guys this because when I did that, when I canceled the events, that was a faith leap. I
Yeah.
didn't have I didn't have a 10-step business plan. I didn't have any business, laying down a business, because I didn't have a financially sound business to pick up. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so the
Yeah.
fear of like, I don't have the money, or I don't have the, like, all of that existed.
Yeah.
And I felt like, Brittany, you're already living your worst case scenario right now. Like, I realized my worst case scenario was every day of my life, because every day I was waking up miserable, because I knew in the back of my head that there was something more out there. There was more I could do. And I can talk about this here in a little bit, but for so many years, for 10 years, I was seen as somebody who promoted physical self care. And I started to learn and realize and understand that self-care is so much more than the bubble baths. It's so much more than going to a spin class once a month with your girlfriends, or, Sunday brunch. Like, it is beyond the physical. And I was only teaching a small sliver of the pie to my people. And I felt like I was doing people a disservice. And so that's where like the faith leap came, is that I knew I could expand on what I was already teaching
Mhm.
and just open up a whole new level of that. But yeah, that's kind of where that led me to.
No, I love it. I love it. And I love, whew, I mean, taking a leap like that with no game plan and no after, like, you're just kind of like, talk about surrender. That's a whole deep level of surrender, because it's just like you had to take that leap knowing that there was something better for you on the other side, really having no idea what that better was even at that
Yes.
point, right? So it's also like, okay, I'm going to make a change for something that I've done and known for 10 years so well, and I'm going to basically erase it, and then what? And it's like you
Yeah.
have the confidence and the faith and the understanding that, like, okay, well, if I have to rebuild this, I can, but I'm going to rebuild it better in my own way with the things that actually matter, and that whatever it means to you. So what did that turn into?
Well, so it turned into a lot of stress at first, because I was like, okay, like, I laid it down, and now what? But I had to really lean into like, what was my message that I was trying to tell people, and what skills do I already have, and how do I merge the two and offer that to people in a way that's going to speak to the person who needs that. It's not, I had to realize on this journey, and I'm still realizing for sure, that it's not for everyone. And laying down one thing, it was super eye-opening to see who goes with you and who doesn't go with you. And I think Trent Shelton talks about this too. Now that you bring him up, I think he's talked about how when he laid down his football career and started, really speaking on stages about personal growth and development and mindset and everything, the people that only cared about Trent Shelton for football didn't want Trent Shelton for personal growth, and so they were gone. And so people who wanted Brittany for, exactly what they knew me for 10 years, kindly exited themselves. So there's been a whole transition. This year has felt very much like a transition in my business, also like physically with moving and stuff. But it really looked like looking at what I was already good at and where I wanted to kind of what new message I wanted to share. And so for me, that was, I knew that I am good at coaching people and I'm good at community building. And so I thought, this is how I create tools and resources and support for women. it I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what physical product. I don't have a 10-step business plan, but I have faith that I can figure it out. And so just relying and really getting clear on like, what is it that I can offer people? And again, that took all those years. I spent 10 years in the classroom, 10 years building a fitness business. So that's 20 years of my life that I was cultivating an education background and how to coach and teach and mentor people. But I was also building skill sets once I got into my fitness coaching online with social media and branding and marketing and understanding the body and how it works, and understanding that I wanted to add more rest into, the idea of all this, and just get a broader range of overall self-care. But those were all, it's not like I woke up on January 1st and I had the plan, but I also had many years of a foundation being built along the way that I could kind of look back upon and rely on in the moments when I feel really unqualified. Because there are times when I feel unqualified, right?
We
Anytime you're a
all
beginner.
feel unqualified. We all have that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I was telling my husband just yesterday, I was like, I had an epiphany on my walk. I was out on my walk and I was like, feeling like I'm lacking some confidence lately, like in where I'm going with my business. And I was like, but actually, that I should lack confidence, because if I was confident, then I wouldn't be growing. Like, I would already have the skills and the things and I'd be already doing it. And I should probably get uncomfortable and into the next level. Like, I have confidence that I'll take action. I have confidence that I'll figure it out. But like, when I'm talking about the confidence of like, you know, who's going to join or what's the offering, I don't have the confidence because I'm still creating it, and that's normal. Right.
Right. Well, and that's huge because it's like you're doing something that is, I mean, I guess there's similarities from the foundations you've built previously, but it's also very different. And it's different
Yeah.
for you because you're a different person today than you were 5 years ago,
Yes.
or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And because you have started to, like, you outgrew this situation, of course it's going to expand you, because now it's like you're a beginner again in some ways, even though you're an
Hmm.
expert in others. And so it's like
Yeah.
also bridging those gaps of put like, okay, where is my edge and what am I pushing? And even though I don't have a strategy, I know what my message is and that it's meant to be shared. And that's why
Yeah.
you continuously keep showing up, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And I think the most authentic messages are the ones where that person actually, if you're watching someone on social and you really love their message, like genuinely love their message, they're not just like an influencer selling you like something
right.
on Amazon or whatever. Like, I mean, like the people who you're like, wow, there's power behind what they're talking about. That person struggled with that thing that they're preaching about, right? Like, that's what I believe. I believe
Well,
that
yeah,
if you
because
watch somebody who you're,
we
yeah,
speak to who we were previously or who we
yes,
even are now,
yeah,
because it's like every time, and there's certain things I think that every time we take a leap of faith, like we're going to re-experience some of those same emotions. It's just
oh yeah,
because it's something new that it's like, oh great, now we're feeling this again. Oh, I got to lean into this again. It's not
yeah,
gonna like, it's not like all of a sudden one day it's like, oh, I'm an expert and this is all going to be easy, because then you're
no,
not growing, like you said.
no.
Like, I mean, it's lovely when you can understand yourself well enough to see that,
Hmm. Well, and
right?
that's the whole beautiful gift of stepping out of the classroom and into that fitness arena and getting into that space of personal growth. Because as a fitness influencer, I guess, my main job first, and what I taught my team and what I taught other fitness influencers too, was it starts with you. Like, you have to care for you before you can go out and care for others. And so mindset and movement and looking at how you're fueling your body and taking care of yourself on a day in day out basis, that was job one. And so if you are taking care of job one, everything else, you start to attract the right people. You start to have the confidence to build your client resume, and you want to serve people well because you feel so good. Um, and and yeah, so I don't even know where I was going with that, but I think it's important that you understand that, like, that's in the class. Oh, that's what I was that's what I was thinking. In the classroom, there was never a moment where someone was like, "How's your mental health?" And maybe
Mm,
it might be different now. I don't know. I've been out of the classroom for a decade, so it could totally be different, especially with like um COVID and all the things, right? And virtual teaching and everything, right? But when I was in the classroom, no one cared about my mental health. No one asked me the last time I did a workout. No one asked me how I was eating or sleeping, or that if I had enough bathroom breaks during the day, right? Did you actually get up and get to go to the bathroom, or were you with your students all day? No
Right.
one cared about me. And when I got into that space of fitness and that arena, I realized that there was an entire world of growth that I wasn't exposed to before. And that sometimes that's the power of getting to an event or getting outside of your small town. For my friends that maybe have never moved in their life, or you got your first job and that's what you've stuck with, and like I commend that. I commend the consistency, and someone who doesn't pack it up and move, like I love that. And I also know that there's so much perspective that I get when I get to meet new people, live in new places, go to these events.
Mm.
And yeah, so no one cared how I was doing when I was a teacher. And then I got into this space where like I cared how my people were doing, I cared how I was doing. And it's all evolved from that, you know?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, yes, yes. I resonate with all of that so much because the fitness industry did the same thing for me. Um, in a very similar way. Like my mom passed away, she had cancer, and right after that I went into this like dark place for a minute, you know? And
Hmm.
in that what pulled me out was becoming a coach. And
Yeah.
in that process, it was like because there was personal development and there was like I had to feed my mind in order to even be able to show up on social media, in order to
Absolutely.
even be able to show up in a public place at that point because I was in such a like I was in a dark space.
Yeah.
And so it was like the social media was so far away from what I felt possible that it was like
Hmm.
you have to work on you. And it was the biggest gift in the whole world because it taught me if I'm not working on myself, how can I expect like you don't attract anything like what you're really wanting or desiring because you're
Yeah.
not embodying it. And if you're not
Yeah.
embodying it, how can you share it? And so it's like the personal growth and that expansion and that understanding of what it means to truly take care of you, not just by looking aesthetically good, but to actually feel good.
Yeah.
And what does it require to feel good? And then once you feel good, of course, it's like that energy radiates, it exudes from you. You want to share it. Other people want more of it. And then they also start to embody, and then that ripple creates, right?
Yeah.
There's so much power in that. And what a lovely thing that you were able to take teaching and educating and take that superpower and combine it. Because then once you learned what you needed to learn from that industry, you combined it with fitness and helped other people and grew a team and grew a community of your own. And
Yeah.
then kind of shifted into, okay, like I'm going to create like truly my own community. I feel like that's what you're doing now. You're creating your own
Yeah.
community of your true people.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And, we've got, so that was kind of my starting point, when I was like, okay, well, I want to branch out on my own. I know I have the skill set, but like, what do I do? And I remember like top of the year, I stood with a dry erase board and a marker, and I just brain dumped like basically like a bucket list of like business of like, wouldn't it be cool? And I would do this activity a lot with people that I was mentoring was, like, no holds back. Like, just I want you to dump out everything like a wouldn't it be freaking cool? Not would it happen, not can it happen, not how do I
Right.
make this happen, but wouldn't it be freaking cool? And I think like one of the things I always said whenever I would make my list, this is not business related, but this is like personal, was that I thought it would be really cool to be on the Ellen show. But like
Yeah.
her show is no more. Like she no longer records her show. And I'm like, dang it, I miss my I miss my I missed my time for that. But like stuff like that, right? Like I don't think at this point I'll never get on the Ellen show because it is no more. But what in your life would be super cool? So I started there. I started there with like a dry erase board and just wouldn't it be cool? And you know, by cleaning the slate and kind of starting at square one all over again and just building the house from the foundation up the way I wanted it to be built, old tendencies die hard. Like you were saying about, when you start something new or you get to a new level and you're like, why am I dealing with the same, limiting belief, or why is this thing coming back up? And I know we say new level, new devil, but I think it's new level, same devil. Like it's always, I feel like it's the same limiting belief or the same thing that comes back, just wearing like a different outfit.
Yeah.
And so I've experienced a lot of those, whereas I'm rebuilding this foundation, I'm like, okay, it could look identical to what I just did, and I know I'm good at that, and it can't, because there's a reason I laid that down. There were things that were broken about that system, and now that I have the gift and the opportunity to like do this again and recreate this, the I don't want to say the right way, but the best way for me right now,
Right.
there's certain things that had to go. There's certain, tendencies, and it's me looking in the mirror, right? Like things that have to go 100% have to deal with me and my boundaries and how I structure things. So when I was like, where do I start when I make this whole bucket list? The first thing I knew I could do was start a community, because I'm like, well, that's easy. Not, I don't say that lightly either. Like, well, that's easy, but it's easy for me, right? And I knew
It
I
feels
can
good
get,
for you too.
yeah,
Yeah.
like because like I said at the beginning, I was the independent woman. I didn't need anybody until I did. And so I know the woman who wants to do life all on her own, who's, trying to set all the goals and achieve all the goals, and she doesn't need anybody's help along the way until she does, right? Until you get to that place where you've actually burned yourself out, or you're
Yeah.
sick, or yeah, because you just didn't actually take care of you. And part of taking care of you, and it's a unique perspective that I give in my community and just in my coaching, is um relationships are a part of self-care. The relationship you have with you, the relationship you have with others, intimate relationships, like that is self-care. And if we are ignoring relationships in our lives that matter to us, our overall well-being, um, it deteriorates. It's not as healthy as it could be if we had, you know, those meaningful relationships that are moving us forward, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it goes so much into values too, because
Mm,
it's like sometimes we don't realize, like, yeah, we like, and maybe that's just it. It's like, oh, I can do it all on my own and I've got this and this and that. But it's also like, but it's so much more fun with other
mm,
people.
yeah.
But it's also learning to allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to share, to
Mhm,
be open, to, I guess it's like if we do it all on our own, no one can take it away, which is not necessarily even true. But it's like we tell ourselves these stories. Or if I
yeah.
do it all on my own, then it's like mine, mine, mine. And it's like you want to hold and control so tight. But it's like, what is that? What is that actually doing for you other than creating this tighter hold and more anxiety and more like, but what if I lose it? And if I lose it, then it's like,
Mhm,
okay, everything's gone. Where it's like
yeah,
you actually have relationships and people and support around you. Like you have other people holding space for you
yeah,
to, like that's huge because that's emotional well-being too. It's not just like, okay, like let me be strong for myself. Yeah, there's a huge portion of us that have to build from the inside out, but
mhm,
also it's like, what kind of friend are you? What kind of spouse are you? What kind of mom are you if you're not loving yourself first and creating
yeah,
that relationship to then also honor these relationships that you have available to you? It's not like
yeah,
nothing is on your own, even if you feel alone, right?
absolutely. And it's so interesting because I still hear, I was taking a spin class this morning, and she said she reminded the class that self-care is not selfish. And I just sometimes when people say that now, I'm like, we're still saying that? Like, are we really still saying that? Like, we haven't gotten past saying that. And what's interesting too to me when we say that is that's a total feminine thing. There is not a group of men sitting around right now having a little live stream saying, "Oh my gosh, Bob, like self-care, it's not selfish, so make sure." Like as women, I also question why do we feel like we're selfish? Why is that a label that's placed on women, especially when we talk about self-care? And the way that I see self-care is a lot of self-care to me truly is adulting. It's taking deep ownership and responsibility for your life and building a life that you're obsessed with, a life that you're thriving versus surviving, right? But that's self-care to me, taking that deep ownership, having focus, having intention, having direction. And it's really hard to do that on an island, and so community becomes so much of a part of that, and relationships become such a part of that. And there have been seasons in my life where I would look around and look at the relationships I had, the friendships I had, the people that were in my circle, and realize, wow, I created the wrong circle. Like
Mm,
these people aren't moving me anywhere. Like, not even like any closer to my goals, but just any, like, we're not moving anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And that's terrifying too, to find yourself in, to realize that the relationships around you are aren't, they're not empowering you to do anything, right?
Oh, that's all I can think of is when you're talking about like your big audacious goals, like what wouldn't it be cool if, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, wouldn't it be cool if any of these things happen, but who do I have to become in order for them to happen? And who do I have to have around me in order for them to happen? And if you
Yes.
really are in these relationships that you know are going nowhere, it is terrifying, but it's also like you go through a grieving process.
Yes.
Because it's like some of these people might have been part of your life for years and years and years. Some might be family. Like there's so many levels and
Yeah.
and that's where it's like, well, what if this and this and this happened? But it's also like, gosh, my husband and I were just talking about this morning because when there's a lot of judgment around you, whether it's your friends, whether it's family, like just people in your corner, and like there's that person that's like worried about what it's going to look like to everyone.
Mm,
And then it's the other side of it where it's like, I feel so good about my decision and confident in who I am that no matter what they think, I'm okay with it. Like, it
yeah.
doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
I think that's something that, again, it's like the self growth, but in your relationships and in that progression of who is in your circle and are they moving you? Are they holding you back? If you have a big dream, are they telling you, are they speaking life into it or are they taking it away and robbing the life
Yeah.
that you're trying to pour into it?
Absolutely. And it's tricky because there's some relationships that you've had for so long that they're like family. And then there's family where, you know, a lot of times maybe your family is not the one, or you long for the support from your family or those closest to you, and you're just not getting it. And that's what I love about online community like this, is because I don't have to abandon those relationships and be like, well, we can no longer be together, but I can also place myself around other people who are rallying with me and they're in my corner and they're supporting me and they're excited for me, even if the people in my actual day-to-day life maybe aren't as much. And I've had to do that in seasons where, like, I didn't just want to abandon ship and be like, well, you're all cut off, because, like, that's also not
Yeah,
serving anybody, right?
right.
Um, but I think inevitably the people that don't need to be in your life, they're gonna fade out as you start to grow. But in those initial steps, I think it's important to that's where that online community I think is so valuable. And it has been, at least in my life, because I've been able to, like, catch confidence from my online community,
Oh, yeah.
um, and cling to the coattails too of, like, I have, like, and I call them mentors from afar. Like, they don't know, I have no clue who I am. I haven't paid for a single one of their courses. I just stalk them online. Maybe I listen to their podcast, maybe I watch their, social media, or I get their newsletters or whatever, but I call them mentors from afar, and I cling to their coattails because I'm like, you're going the direction I want to go, so I'm going to, like, hang on to you,
Yeah.
and so the more you can cling to those coattails of the people who are going the direction you want to go, um, the more that those other people don't have as much of an influence on you. And then sometimes I even think you get to then be the influencer. You get to be, I call it the, instead of being a thermometer, you get to be the thermostat, right? And so
Yeah.
instead of, like, being a thermometer that when you put it in cold water, it goes cold, when, it goes down. When you put it in a hot environment, it goes up. When you're the thermostat, you hold steady. And I've been working hard to become more of a thermostat in my life than the thermometer, where if I'm over here with these people, I'll gossip. But if I go over here with these people, I'm growing, and, like, how can
Right.
I just be kind of more steady? And that doesn't mean I have to abandon relationships or abandon ship. But I can just be more steady when I'm in people's presence, right?
Yeah. But I think again, it's still, I mean, I'm circling it back. I keep coming back to the self-care aspect, especially because your whole mission is the self-care sisterhood. And it's like it's so much deeper than a bubble bath, but it's like it's learning to have like grow the confidence muscle in yourself
Mm,
first. And
yeah.
yeah, if you have to ride coattails for sure, like I've done that because it's like, well, I don't know how I'm going to get there or what's going to happen, but I know that if I jump on this train, I'm going to continuously get fed some good shit. you know,
Yeah.
where
100%.
so that's like one aspect of it, but it's also like even as small as like people are like, oh, affirmations, like what do those really do for you? And I know that there's tons of people that have mixed review on what they are, what and whatever, and it's you have to be tied in an emotional way to whether or not something's going to work for you. But in this regard, like I really think that's so important because We have to learn to love ourselves wholly,
Yeah.
fully, and like as we are, to have the confidence to be okay when other people are, that thermometer drop. you
Yeah.
know, because the only way
Yeah.
you're going to learn to hold steady is by actually learning to accept yourself
Yeah.
first and know that, hey, this might not be right for you, but this is what's right for me. And I feel good about it. So I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether you
And
come along or not, or whether like it's not about abandoning at that point. It's just a matter of like, this is where I'm going. If you're on the train, jump on, let's go. If
right.
not, okay, that's okay
It's
too.
okay. Yeah. The train's leaving the station. You can get on it.
Choo-choo.
Yeah, exactly. Hello. You can get on it or you can stay at the exactly. And I a lot of the women that I've mentored over the years, like a big thing that I've harped on with them is confidence is created when you keep promises to yourself.
Consistent.
And love is an action. Like I think love, like in my marriage, love is an action. It's not a feeling. That feeling wore off on our wedding night, you know what I'm saying? Like, not really. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's and we could go into a tangent about marriage, but I'm like, I think that's one of the things that breaks my heart is that we're not taught growing up that we're taught like the steps to take. But like when you get married, and I guess I say this because I got married later in life and I don't have kids yet. I'm almost 40, no kids. We got married later. And I've watched a lot of people that I grew up with marry, kids, divorce, like all the things. And sometimes I'm like, man, if they just would have like had a little more perspective or like growth under their belt, they would have had a better idea of like when you say I do, it's not a feeling. Like there's a commitment, there's a promise there. And so when that's like love with a relationship with another person, right? There's a commitment, there's a promise, there's it's not a feeling, it's action. It's what you're going to contribute to that relationship and what it gives back to you. But wouldn't self-love be the same? Like if love is an action and you view it that way, wouldn't you view self-love as action? And I think confidence comes when we keep promises to ourselves and we take action. So like earlier I said, I'm not confident necessarily in the next thing that I'm offering for my business. I'm not necessarily confident in that, but I'm confident that I'll show up today. I'm confident that I'll be consistent with my messaging. I'm confident that like even if I don't feel like it, right? I'll open my journal, I'll read my book, I'll pour good things into me, right? Like so even though I don't have the confidence of the unknown necessarily, I have confidence that I can show up and take action. And then that continues to just create what you see today. Everything that truly is here wouldn't be here, I don't think, if I hadn't taken a leap to leave the classroom. Like nothing. Like all the lines, that I look back and I can kind of like connect the dots with. I'm like, wow, none of those lines would have been here if I didn't take that first scary leap.
So, Brittany, let me ask you, when it comes to confidence and it comes to just this
Mhm.
topic, how do you think discipline plays into it?
Discipline is the sexiest word. Like, oh, I'm so glad you said the D word. Right? Like, there are words that, like, I'm like, yes. I think discipline is so sexy because it's not mainstream. Like, it's not. It, I think if you look at the most confident people, you're going to see something they're disciplined at. If you look at that TikTok dancer that you wish you could be like, I'm certain there's a lot of B-roll footage of them practicing and being disciplined in their craft. If you look at that influencer who meal plans and has a six-pack abs and is glowing and always talks about like clean eating, and you just wish you could have like the same discipline as them, right? Or motivation. Sorry, that's the one. I wish I had the motivation that they have, right?
Motivation, yeah.
It's actually not motivation. They have discipline
Right.
for their craft. When I look at these amazing speakers that like I would love to be like this speaker on stage or this podcaster or this coach, like I wish I could, get to a place where I was confident like that in my craft. It's because of the reps. Like the reps you put in, the discipline when no one's watching, I think is so sexy because it's really easy to do something on social media when everyone's watching and you're like, everyone's going to see this. So I'm going to show off, that I sweaty selfie because I did it today and I want people to see it. But it's like, show me your sweaty selfie on August 29th, not September 1st. right? Like, that's sexy to me. Like, don't show me your sweaties. Anybody can show me a sweaty selfie on a Monday on January 1st, but not everybody can show me that same consistency and discipline for years, right?
So I just want to highlight this because I feel like this brings my point full circle. Because you're talking about like maybe I don't have the confidence in the next thing in my business or what I'm stepping into, but I know that I can show up. And that's you. You're showing up every day. That's discipline. Success leaves clues. When you look at anyone that's doing something
Mm-hmm.
that you're admiring, it's because there's discipline built in behind the scenes. So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, they're an overnight success. No, they're not. And no one is an overnight success. It
Yeah.
took time. It took time to build those abs, just like it'll take time to build a business, just like it'll take time to build a community. And that timeline's different for everyone, but you still have to continuously show up and do the work. And I think that's what true self-care actually is learning to have the discipline in the things that are going to move you to the
Yeah.
like move the needle and move you where
Yeah.
you're trying to go. But if you
Yeah.
also don't have an idea of where you want to go yet, be open to the possibilities. And I love that this is what you exude. This is what you shared, that you show up on social media every day. You show up on social media every day to show people the good, bad, and the ugly. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, how many times have I heard someone say, well, I don't want to show up on social media today because I was crying. Yeah, but other people need to know that you're a real human and that you're going through it
Yeah.
because we're
Yeah.
all feeling some of that. And that to me is like, that's leadership, truly. So I commend you for that. Like, it's huge
Thank you.
because so many people just won't do that and they don't show up in that way. And it's like, oh, well, I have to put my best foot forward. No, you have to put your real foot forward, you know?
Yes. I love that. I
So
love that.
I just think that, like, again, all of this comes full circle into the self-care because you have to have self-discipline in order to actually truly have care.
Yeah. Right.
But you're
And
not going to
it
create.
comes down to, do you care about yourself? You
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
And discipline, like action. It's just, there is a very Instagrammable, TikTokable version of self-care that's out there. And then there's what I think is considered real self-care. And I think real self-care ties in a lot with growth and leveling up and vision and values and priorities, and just, again, taking deep ownership and responsibility over the life that you want to live, not what somebody told you were supposed to do or what learned behaviors you gathered along the way, right? But like, when you sit down and you're quiet with yourself, um, what you truly want, and to go for that, that's caring for you,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. No, it's so good that you said that, vision and knowing like what you actually want in that direction, is part of self-care, because that's actually like a huge piece of something we're tackling this fall in the sisterhood membership. So I decided when I was doing the self-care sisterhood to, I don't know, like when I see a lot of people do communities, when
Mhm.
I was looking for people like, okay, who's doing a community well? What are they doing? Let me observe, right? That's always where I start, you guys. Like, if I could give one bit of advice and you're like, I don't know what to do next. I don't know. I want to take a leap, but I don't know what to do next. Like, open your eyes and just start observing. Like, I think Teresa, you asked me one day, you're like, how do you, figure out the brand or the thing or the whatever? And I was like, I just look around at what I like, and I think the more you can open your eyes and really take notice of what sticks out to you, what resonates with you, that'll give you clues to where the next step is, right? But when it comes to creating the sisterhood, I was like, well, a lot of memberships are either annual, they're monthly, or they're quarterly, right? Like, that's what I was seeing, and I was like, annual's too long of a stretch. I was like, monthly is too fast of a turnover, because I feel like that's like, as a fitness coach, that was kind of the trap that I got stuck in. And maybe you too, where it was like every month it was like, okay, more clients, like, and then you'd have attrition from your previous month's clients because they didn't get results in, 24 hours, they didn't have abs yet. So they're like, I'm bored, right? And
Yeah.
so you felt like every month you're like, okay, like, let's regain the energy and let's do a new boot camp or let's do a new challenge or whatever. And that was exhausting. So I knew I didn't want to go that fast paced. And so I was leaning towards the quarterly, but then when I really started to ask, like, how does self-care, like as women, especially in a sisterhood, what's the rhythm? And I think there's like such a beautiful rhythm in nature and seasons. And there's so much we can learn from seasons when it comes to how to care for ourselves. And the more I can realize, and I could go on a tangent right now with all of your people about New Year's resolutions and why that's like the worst time of year, because like the world goes inward, like plants go inward, nature goes inward, animals hibernate, like everything's going inward. And then as humans, we're like, I'm here, like I'm at the gym, like let's hit some goals. And I'm like, this is the worst time, because in your natural rhythm, you want to go inward in the winter. And that's why that's anyway, I digress.
Yeah,
But
it's like
I realized, yeah. So I realized that the seasons have a lot to do with our self-care, and I wanted to pair it with the seasons. So that's kind of how it's built. And we have like we're getting done with our summer session, but we're merging into the fall. And in the fall, we're talking about burnout, we're talking about overwhelm, we're talking about stress. And I'm excited because as I start to peel back the layers on stress and on burnout and really diving deep into the research of like what's really going on here and how can self-care help? How can this community help? How can I as a coach help? I realize that vision and values is huge. And so I'm
Mm.
excited because that's going to be a huge exercise we're going to walk through together this fall season. Is just like, can we get a little clear on like what we actually want in 30 days by the end of 2023, this time next year? Like, can we just start to look at maybe like the small direction changes we want to make, you know?
What I love about vision and values work, Brittany, is that when you have your vision and you know your values, it's so much easier to make decisions.
Mm,
Going
yep.
back to the discipline piece, though, it's like, will you say no to things that really aren't aligned with your vision and values? Or will you continue to say yes because of some external something? Whether it's like validation, worried about hurting someone's feelings, showing up for them, or, it's like even when you're talking about, well, you make decisions in your life that are serving your life, not what other people expect of you.
Yeah.
And I think that visions and values is so huge in that, because if you are not clear on your vision or your values, then you're going to be saying yes to things that really don't align.
Yeah.
And that's going to keep you stuck because you're not actually putting yourself in positions to grow or to expand or to do the things.
Yeah. And then I think as women, we become silently resentful. At least I have.
Oh yeah, it totally brings up so many
Right.
emotions, right? So then it just
Yeah,
holds
you become resentful.
further. Like it's just
Yeah,
like,
because and I just think if we could learn, understand, and no doesn't have to be like, I've always struggled with no because I was a yes man, and I always struggled with no because I didn't want people to. I always wanted to feel like people could count on me.
mm,
Um, and especially as a teacher, like I wanted to prove that I was a rock star. I wanted to. This could go way back, but I've always been a performer. I've always looked for the solos, like, like you want to be center stage. Like I've always wanted the spotlight. And so even as a teacher, it's like I'd say yes because I wanted the recognition. I wanted the spotlight. I wanted to be the hero. I always wanted that. And I do have like below that is a really strong point of leadership that I have, but I have to get rid of like the fluff above it to understand that like leadership is a strong suit of mine. But if I like gravitate into like because it's about me, because I want the spotlight, then my leadership's not healthy, right? And so I realized that my no's, I wasn't able to say no because so much was ingrained in me growing up of like wanting to just always be the best, have the best grades, have this, right? And so my yes came from like trying to prove myself. My yes came from not wanting to miss opportunities because I had a scarcity mindset that if I said no to this, then another one wouldn't ever pop up.
yeah.
And not wanting to let people down because I thought that they expected so much of me and so great of me that how dare I ever say no? And so just understanding that like no for me was such like a negative, harsh, bad word. And I felt like I had to learn like a nicer way to say no to people and just like, oh my gosh, thank you for thinking of me. Listen, this month is crazy. Can we circle back? And not just putting people on the back burner because it could totally be a circle back, but just like understanding there are other ways to say no than just like in a cold, bitchy. Can I say that on your thing? Yeah, because I really was. I would be the person that like if I said no, then I was the bitch, you know. Um, and just learning that like it didn't have to be like that. It didn't have to just be yes and you're a great person or no and you're a bitch. Like I could find a way to like be authentic to me and my values, my vision, my priorities, my discipline when it came to like yeses and nos and all that.
Yeah. My yeses came from like the emotional. Like it's like, oh, like we can have a really great conversation and I'm super excited, like, oh, this sounds great. And then all of a sudden I'm like, later on, I'm like, wait, does this really sound great? Or maybe I don't really want to do that thing, or this isn't the circle I really want to be involved in. And then it was like, well, I already committed. And so it felt like, okay, well, now I can't go back on my word.
Mm,
And so I would get the emotional yes, and then I'd be like, "Oh crap." So I had to learn how to also do the same and say, "Do you mind if I think about that? Do you let me sit in this for a little bit and get back to you?" And
yeah.
truly circle back to you is that for me. Like maybe it'll be a yes, maybe it'll be a no when I circle back, but I actually need to go inward to consider, how does this feel in my body and energetically for me
Yeah.
before I commit?
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's like I'm overcommitted, burnt out, and resentful. Right?
Hmm.
So,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's so, I love that it shows up so differently in so many different people's worlds, but it's really the underlying of when you have a vision and you have your like, you're fully, you know what your values are, it makes it easier for you to actually make a decision based off of what's truly best for you instead of what's best for
Yeah.
others.
Yeah. And, that's the other thing that a lot of times I think if someone's listening to this, they're like, values, like, first of all, I don't even know where to start. But second of all, like, that sounds time consuming. And I think I think that's where like our busy world and where people just they don't have cracks in their day, our distracted world, it's robbing us from having the cracks in our day, the time in our life, the ability to escape and get to an event for a weekend where you can have some time to put pen to paper, get still, understand what actually matters to you, and maybe, like for us when we were at the event, like be guided through something that's going to help you have some breakthroughs or some aha moments, right? And that's so powerful. And I know like not everybody has the opportunity or means to get to something like that, but man, everybody has the cracks that they can find in their day. And I just like I encourage anybody, like, I know that when you hear vision and values, it sounds like you need time. And I'm sure somebody listening probably is like, well, that's nice for her. I don't have that time to even begin. But like, gosh, it is time well spent, you know. It
Yeah.
is time
Well,
well
you
spent
also,
when you do that work.
oh, man, but also I mean, like, we could keep going. We could keep going and going and going, because the reality
Yeah.
too is like if you don't make the time to sit with yourself and get quiet and find out the answers to these things, then you're actually wasting time because you're living without your vision, without your purpose, without your values front and
Yeah.
center. And so what are
Yeah.
you doing? You're on the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
That's also not a way to, like, unfortunately, people are living like that so much in our pre-programmed world that we are plugging into. And that's just like, I guess that's why we're here. We're trying to disrupt that a little bit. Like, hey, let's shake
Mhm.
things up and let's go
Yeah.
inward. So on that note, tell us about the self-care sisterhood. Tell us about the fall session. Like, share that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So, Self Care Sisterhood, it's a seasonal membership, like I said. And this fall, the whole theme is called Beyond Burnout. And that came to be because I love to, especially in the beginning stages of this community as we're building it, it's not a me thing. It's not about building it for me and my glory and, all the things, look at, all the things Brittany can come up with. But I really want to dig into topics that are relevant to the women in the community and what are we struggling with? Where do we need the support? And I've done multiple polls as we head into new seasons asking like what are some topics you would like, and when I did this poll coming out of the spring into the summer, burnout won. But I didn't do burnout in the summer, and I'll circle back to why here in a second. But when I did the poll again in the summer, burnout won again. And I heard my people when they said burnout, but I knew that summer, when I was telling you like we were creatures of seasons, and I knew that the fall is when we kind of start to come inward a little, the seasons start to shift and change, it gets cooler. We also get back into these habits of back to school, maybe back into saying yes to all the things, all the sports, all the kiddo stuff, right? As especially our mamas that are in the sisterhood. We also get into the holidays where we feel like we have to say yes to everything and we have to just do things because, right? Because that's what's expected of us. And so I knew I wanted to save burnout for the fall when it was first the voted on topic. But when it was the second like time in a row that our sisterhood said, this is what we need, I was like, I hear you loud and clear and I got you. So beyond burnout is a topic. It's all about recharging our spirits, kind of reclaiming control over our lives. And I've broken it down. So the sisterhood is like I said, seasonal. So there's September, October, November. And in September is when I do my deep coaching. We have a 50-page guided workbook that I walk you through. I'm talking stress, I'm talking burnout, I'm talking types of burnout, I'm talking about what the effects are on your body when we undergo that. I'm going to talk and break down the stress cycle and what that looks like and why most people aren't actually completing a stress cycle, and that we're all wired, like we all have stress. I'm not going to bring you into the sisterhood and be like, stress free is the way to be, because you're not. Like, you're going to sit in traffic, like you're going to have an annoying experience at the mall at Christmas time, right? Like, there's going to be something that is going to add stress to your life. So that's inevitable. It's how we close out the loop and react and respond to that stress in our life. And I'm going to walk through lots of tools and resources and things like that. But basically, there are three areas that I'm giving as kind of the platform for how we remove the stress and get kind of beyond burnout in our lives. And that's looking at self-care daily. How is it woven in daily? This goes beyond the bubble baths. And I'm not against the bubble bath. Like, I love a good bubble bath. But this is going beyond. This is doing the other work. This is like, do you have who are the relationships that matter to you in your life? How are you honoring those relationships? Do you have fun? Like, what are some fun things that you just do just because you do them? And when's the last time you did them? And looking at how self-care is woven throughout our lives. Do you need to mow the lawn? Like, I was talking on my social the other day that like mowing our lawn was like self-care on a Sunday because it needed it and it was stressing us out. So we're talking about that. We're talking about priorities. I'm going to walk our sisterhood through, how do you define your priorities? How do you even know what they are? And we might think we know what our priorities are, but when we actually put pen to paper and we look at where we're spending the most time, does our calendar match what we say our priorities are? And we're going to see how can we get those two in alignment. And then the third part of this whole process is really getting back to the vision and the values. And I'm going to walk the sisterhood through a whole series of how to find out our core values. How are we actually living these out? How could we maybe start living them out more? And then get kind of clear on our vision, which I think is really fun, because imagine like by Thanksgiving, you already know your vision before the ball even drops. Like, you don't need to like make a vision board. I mean, you can. I love a good vision board, but you've already done that work. Like, you don't have to wait until a ball drops to have permission to make a vision board that's just going to collect dust. Like, we're going to do some of that work together. And then another fun part about the sisterhood is, there's the coaching aspect. So there's guided coaching, which is me. And then I always bring in an expert guest speaker. And we actually have, her name's Dr. Morgan Cutlip. I'm looking here because I got a stack of books. I don't have her book yet because her book is coming out in September, but Dr. Morgan Cutlip, she's an expert on relationships and on burnout. And she has a book coming out called Love Your Kids Without Losing Yourself.
Ooh,
and
I love that. Just the
I
title
love it
alone
too.
is so powerful.
Yes. And the coolest part is she's our expert guest speaker. She's coming in November to pour into us and talk to us. It's going to be so, so good. But remove kids. Like, love your blank, love your job without losing yourself.
Yeah.
Love your, side hustle without losing yourself. Love your, like, you just fill in the freaking blank, because as women, we tend to serve others and give and give and give. So whatever it is that you can fill that blank in, if you're not a mama or you don't plan on being a mama, like, you can read that book and find so much value. But she's coming in. That's going to be really good. And then we do lots of fun things, because that's the other part. So there's coaching and then there's community. So a couple fun things that are coming down the pipeline in the fall. We have, so her book is releasing, but we also have a couple other book picks that I love book club. Like, I love growing, I love reading, and the people that come into the sisterhood, I hope will love the same. And if not, will get on the bandwagon with me. So I have book club picks that we do this season. As we're heading into the holidays, I decided it'd be fun to do a Bible study, because I always pick one. I pick 3 books, but one of them I pick as a faith-based option for anyone who wants to embed their growth with their faith. And so paired with that, I'm actually doing a Bible study this fall. So I'm really excited about that. I'm adding that into the sisterhood. You do not have to be Christian to join the sisterhood. I just think that that's a fun way to add on to our spiritual self-care and to explore our faith too. Because I think that like in my journey, that's been a lot of growth for me, was coming to terms with like, what do I believe? Like, who is my higher power? Where am I like in, what's guiding me when things get hard? So we're doing that. And then we've got you are coming in and doing a virtual Reiki session with us, which you guys, I am like so excited about, because first of all, I knew when we were tackling burnout, I was trying to think of like what virtual events. It's a virtual community. So you're like, okay, what events, what community building events can you do that would tie into this topic? And I was like, I already have someone who is like so good at what you do. You're such a healer. You have such a calming, soothing gift. And I'm just excited for you to guide us through that. So that's one of our, we call midweek meetups, where we get together and we just have some community and girl time. And that's one of them. I think we're going to do a cheese board class. This is like a nice escape. Yeah. Halloween themed cheese board class. And then we do sweat meetups. We do it all. We have fun. It's coaching, it's community, it's self-care, it's all together. Like there's no wrong way to do it. You know what I mean? But the topic is beyond burnout. And I'm pretty stoked. We start enrollment on September 1st. So like we're getting there. We're getting close.
Yes, I love that. Well, and I just want to speak to the sisterhood too, because I feel like there's something for everyone in everyone's learning style. Brittany is amazing. I mean, her teacher skills definitely come out in the workbook, like, because it's this beautiful curated package of everything that you need to get you through. And it's nice to have that guide. It's nice to reference it. She also does this really cool thing where she takes it to wherever, like the FedEx or UPS or whatever, and spiral bounds it. Yeah, just like that. Which I love. And I love that so much. Like, that's such a life hack, by the way, because how many times do we have just random papers everywhere? And we're like, what are we going to do with all this?
I know.
And so I love that I love it. And then there's just an awesome community of women that are always sharing what they're going through, the recipes. Are you going to have recipes in the fall?
I love food, and food is just part of what I do. And like, when you're like, okay, how do I brand myself? And sometimes I'm like, how does food like fit in my brand? And I'm like, it just does, because it's just me. Like, so anyway, yeah, it's me. There's got to be recipes. There's got to be food. So
I'm sure well, and that's what's really cool too about this summer session that we had, because there was actually like food planning, meal planning, because it was all about like self-care, personal, like what does that look like? Not just physical fitness, but nourishment, all of it.
Yeah.
And I loved that aspect. But even just a cheese board. But if you follow Brittany and you just get her recipes or see what she posts on her social media, like you'll see she has some really cool things. She'll share her grocery hauls with you and what she's shopping for, what she's picking up. And I love how you plan it all out and it's so organized. I do envy that just a little bit. Like I know you're teaching us that and showing us that, but it's like sometimes I sit down to figure out what I want to eat or what I'm going to have this week and like all the things, and I just get overwhelmed. Brittany created this whole book just for recipes and meal planning. So I feel like there's so much value in the sisterhood. And every session has something different to offer, which is also exciting because it's not just like the same thing over and over. So if you guys are interested in that, definitely find Brittany at Brittany. What is your handle? It's at Brittany Frost, right?
No, it's at Inspire Beauty Brit.
Inspire Beauty Brit. But if you search Brittany Frost, it will come up.
Yes.
I've tried. And then how else can people find you? What's the other best way besides your Instagram?
Yeah, so I have a podcast. It's on Apple and Spotify. So you can search for the Self Care Sisterhood and you'll find that. And then my website is inspirebeautybrit.com. So you can find me easily on Instagram, inspirebeautybrit, and same thing.com over on the website. That's where I have a area with my blog that has all the recipes to it. And that's also where you can get more information on the sisterhood membership and whatnot. If this season doesn't resonate, but you're like looking in the future and trying to see what's coming down the pipeline, you can find stuff there too.
I love it so much. We'll definitely tag you so everyone can find you. And thank you so much for sharing this conversation, this time,
Yes.
and just like your expertise with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's seriously an honor. I'm so grateful.
I'm so glad we were able to do this. Okay, I'll talk to you soon.